Fiber Warriors, I would like to introduce today a wonderful woman. Her name is Sarah Ticho. Sarah has spent her career working across the interdisciplinary arts as a producer, creator, and researcher. She is the founder of Hatsumi, a research and design studio that works at the intersection of arts, health, and immersive technology to develop experiences that challenge how we think and feel about the world and imagine the future of health and well-being. She's a freelance producer with Explore Deep, an artist-led, clinically validated meditative virtual reality experience controlled by breathing. Sarah is the healthcare lead at Immersive UK, supporting the virtual reality and healthcare sector across the UK, and in her spare time is training to become a death doula, a non-medical support to people going through the end-of-life process. Welcome, Sarah. How are you?
Hi. Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I've been really looking forward to this.
Yes. Before to start questions, could you please tell us what do you enjoy most in life?
Gosh, I mean, there's so many things, but I think at the moment what I've been really enjoying is dance classes with my housemate. She's a Zumba instructor, and so we've been doing Zumba, we've been calling it, on Saturday mornings with all of our friends, and it's such a, I forgot how little I've been using my body in lockdown, so it's just nice to just dance and be silly and feel connected to people that are far away.
I know, I understand that feeling. Yeah, well, thank you, Sarah. Okay, so how did you get into the virtual reality?
Well, I didn't plan to at all. I remember trying virtual reality years and years ago and just being like, this does not interest me at all. But I have a background in anthropology. And then after I graduated university, I worked in the NHS for a little bit before moving into film and contemporary art, like mostly as a sort of producer and more of an administrative sort of role than creative. But I think it was about 2014, I ended up going on holiday, and whilst I was away and traveling by myself, then I ended up having a psychotic episode. And so at the time I didn't really know what was happening to me, but I think it was coming back and sort of going through the healthcare system that I felt really powerless, and like I didn't really have a voice or a way to be able to talk about the experience. And so having worked in the arts, I initially became really interested in storytelling and maybe writing like a short story or a book or a film around what that was like. But I didn't want it to be about me. I think I wanted to explore what it's like, just to understand what it's like to be someone else that's having this kind of altered experience. And so I moved to Sydney for a little bit, and I saw someone giving a TED talk about virtual reality and the different ways it can really explore humanity. And so that sort of led me down this garden path.
You are a healthcare lead at Immersive UK. What is Immersive Technology and how does it work?
So immersive technology includes so that's a kind of broad ranging term for a lot of different types of new emerging technologies. Predominantly the one that I spend most of my time with is virtual reality. And so that is when people get a virtual reality headset, which you put on your face, and it kind of takes you into this sort of other world where you feel like you are in another place. You can see and feel things spatially, and you can interact with those environments. There are other forms of immersive technology, so for example augmented reality, so things like Pokemon Go, or when you can still see the real world but there are different images and sounds as well around it. And I think it's important to acknowledge that with a lot of these technologies, it's not just about visuals, it's about sound and haptics and integrating other forms of sensory experience around the world. And then there are other things like mixed reality as well. So, for example, the Magic Leap headsets where you're wearing glasses. But yeah, it's a whole range of emerging new technologies that
I know. Sarah, what is Hatsumi and how has immersive technology specifically helped you?
So Hatsumi means to see something for the first time, or in my reimagination of this world, that's what it means. And so what we've been doing is adapting an existing form of an arts and health research method called body mapping that looks at how you trace traditionally you trace around your body on a large piece of paper. You go through a mindfulness experience and you start to think about, for example, what does pain look like for me? Like if, for example, you live with fibromyalgia, where do you feel that pain in your body, and what sort of colours or textures or words do you associate with that experience? And so you build up this artwork as a way of being able to communicate that. So in the virtual reality experience, then you're putting a virtual reality headset on, and you have an avatar that is the same sort of height and dimensions as you. And so we've made different 3D drawing tools that you can draw onto the body with. So you can paint with fire and electricity and water and other tools that are animated that we've co-designed with people with lived experience. And we're looking into how it can be used to improve communication, but also potentially treatment and new forms of research around pain and mental health conditions.
Okay. I read about body map in your website. It makes invisible experiences visible, enables to indescribable to be shared with others, and thereby increases the understanding for another's subjective experience. And I work with patients with invisible illnesses such as depression, anxiety, fibromyalgia, chronic pain through dance movement therapy. Ooh. And I found body map very interesting from my perspective, Sarah. So can you tell us more about body map, please?
Mm-hmm. So a few years ago, I met a researcher that had done a lot of work around this called Catherine Boydell, who's based at the Black Dog Institute in Sydney. And yeah, so body mapping as a method has been used for a really long time. Well, I say really long time. It's been used for quite a while. It was first developed in South Africa during the 80s as a tool to encourage women to talk about the embodied experience of living with HIV and AIDS. But since then, it's been used in a real diversity of ways. And so with the work that I've been doing, then, yeah, like I mentioned, I've been translating it from pen and paper to a virtual reality experience. And so with that, thinking about how can virtual reality actually enhance this existing form of research and inquiry. And so, like I mentioned, with different 3D drawing tools, but also what happens when you externalize that? Are you able to, for example, manipulate it? Can you make things smaller and bigger? And how does that change your relationship with these feelings that we have inside our body every day? And also it's easier to save as well. So you can create your own sort of personal visual journal of illustrations. And if people want, we're still working on it at the moment, but when we do release it, then if people want, they'll be able to anonymously upload it to an online archive. And so, for example, you could go to a room of anxiety and see like a terracotta army of people visualizing their anxiety, or for positive things as well. I remember once somebody drew what it felt like telling their partner that they loved them for the first time. And I really like this idea of also people sharing the beautiful, wonderful, amazing experiences in life, and having that as a reminder on the days when you kind of forget that they're there.
Really pretty. What is Explore Deep and how it can improve well-being?
Oh God, I love Explore Deep so much. And I feel like I can be like this mad fangirl because that's kind of how I first approached them, and now get to work with them. It's like, oh, so great. So I first came across Explore Deep right at the beginning of working in virtual reality. And they are a group of, well, they're a startup. We are a startup. They've developed a virtual reality game. So it's a breath-controlled experience. So you put on a VR headset and a biofeedback belt. So you're wearing that around your diaphragm, and it's measuring your expansion of your chest as you breathe. And so your breath is being visualized in front of you, both as like a circle, but also and so it's moving in and out in tandem with your breath. But you're also in this beautiful, expansive underwater universe, which is responding to your breath. So the seaweed will move and light up and change in tandem to you. And so I love it because it's led by artists, but created entirely in collaboration with scientists. So it's got really strong underpinning principles of how slow, deep breathing can help manage anxiety. And now we're looking at different applications of it as well around how it can support people with post-traumatic stress disorder, post-ICU delirium, people that have had medically induced comas, and how it can help them. And we've also done some research into how it can support young people with complex needs and how it can reduce disruptive classroom behaviour as well.
Thank you. What made you say yes to start working with immersive technology?
I got fired from my previous job.
Okay.
Yeah, I was working for a place called the School of Life in Australia, which is probably one of the best places to get fired from, only because it's such a good story. But yeah, I was working with them, and it didn't quite work out. And I was already like very, very interested in this area, and so, like I said, it was kind of this experience that I'd had a few years ago. So I moved to Australia and worked at TEDx Sydney, which is where I first became really interested in VR. Worked at the School of Life for a bit, and then I was like, I actually really want to pursue this, and I think that there's something very interesting there. So I ended up working with the University of New South Wales, and they were running a festival called the Big Anxiety Festival, which was an arts and mental health festival. And it was just through serendipity that I met this researcher, Catherine Boydell, and then the curatorial team from the festival that were part of the university. And so I was employed as a researcher, and then curated this exhibition, and really sort of during that time discovered all the different ways that VR has been used artistically and as an entertainment and a storytelling tool, but also how it's been used therapeutically as well, and how it can be used in pain management, in mental health therapies, in physiotherapy, training, like so many different things. And I think that all these things, when they come together, especially bringing together creative industries and artists with people that do really understand the science, is where that sort of magic happens. So I've been pursuing it under various guises ever since.
Okay. Sarah, what made you think art, virtual reality, and immersive technology are a good triplet for healthcare?
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think like kind of being interested in how I could express my own experience. And I think that was the idea of bringing together the arts or storytelling with virtual reality. And yeah, just finding out more about those health applications. So I think it's, you know, really came from that personal experience, but also just sitting there and Googling stuff, really. I just spent lots of time like going through different film festivals, seeing all the kind of amazing things that people were doing, and yeah, connecting the dots a little bit, and also just like going out and meeting people at different conferences and events and asking lots of questions, and just being a bit lucky as well. But it's definitely been a bumpy ride at various points along the way as well.
I love it. How can virtual reality and immersive technology help people like fiber warriors? The fiber warriors are women that receive the diagnosis of fibromyalgia, chronic pain, anxiety, and all the invisible disease.
Yeah, so there's a real variety of ways out there. I think there's lots in the media at the moment, especially about this. But like virtual reality in itself is already very effective in managing pain. Different studies give different results, but it's usually a fairly significant reduction in pain in that moment. And it's this idea that you're just so immersed in these beautiful worlds that it can really, help reduce your pain, and can also have those effects for even a few hours afterwards, which I think is incredible when there's so much reliance, obviously, on opioids and painkillers, and you know, a lot of the interventions take a really long time for them to take effect, or just don't take effect. That's the problem with chronic pain. It's chronic and it's awful. And I think before really researching this, I had no idea how many people were affected by it, or just how brutal it is as a condition. And again, with anxiety, with things like deep is a really nice example of how it can be used to create calming experiences. It really does feel like you're there. So when you are floating in space or at the bottom of the ocean, and you just feel like you're there, and that is immediately very calming, let alone when your body is connected to that experience as well. There's another really fantastic researcher startup art project called Helium, Healium. It's run by a really amazing woman called Sarah Hill, and again, she does like biofeedback storytelling. So through slow, deep breathing and calming yourself down, then the story will be driven by your body. And I think that's such an interesting area of these scientists and artists that are coming together.
Nice. Can VR and immersive technology be a new alternatives to medicine or a new kind of therapy?
I don't think that it is going to replace medicine. I think there are so many important parts, like we can't ignore the medical pharmacological side of it at all. But I think what's interesting about virtual reality is that it's approaching a series of conditions from a very holistic perspective. And I think it really aligns with these new models that we're seeing in all over the world, looking at, it's called arts on prescription or social prescribing, which is when patients go to doctors with low-level mental health problems or some forms of chronic pain. Then that can often be exacerbated by isolation, loneliness, difficult financial issues. And so now they're trialing it in various places that you can get referred on to somebody called a link worker, who's able to have a more holistic discussion with you about what's happening in your life and refer you on to either other people that can help or sort of different arts-based experiences. So they could be like, oh, did you know that there was a choir down the road? Would you like to meet with them? And actually, you know, the health benefits of singing, for example, are phenomenal. So I think there's a real opportunity for virtual reality to have a role within this idea of preventative care and taking care out of like hospitals and clinical environments and thinking about how it can support people before things get really bad. But now we've just seen in the news as well that the first FDA cleared video game by a group called Achille Interactive. And, you know, with everyone being isolated at the moment with COVID and thinking about how can we bring therapies and interventions to people's home and make it really fun as well. Like the point is these things are beautiful and funny and silly and you want to do it more. And, you know, you've got to be careful that it's not addictive. And I think that VR isn't particularly addictive because you have to be so into it. You are fully immersed into it. But I think that it definitely has an opportunity to take pressure off some care providers and sort of support people in the places they need it the most.
Yes, I agree. And talking about that, Sarah, do you think working with VR can take a place in current interdisciplinary mental health practices where nurses, doctors, and other medical professionals work with psychologists?
I definitely think that there's a role in it, even just things like waiting rooms and just being able to use that time really effectively, getting people to think about what they're going to talk to their clinician about as they before they go in. I think, you know, they could have a place in libraries as well, in public places, and having you know, being able to create experiences that might even be able to pick up things early as well. And I think that there are a lot of very forward-thinking mental health organisations and charities and research groups that are looking into this, including big, you know, healthcare research organisations. I know that's something that the NHS is interested in here in the UK and in the US as well. And there's a really big community of people working very hard around this as well. There's the International VR Healthcare Association that are doing lots of work about bringing together people from all these different backgrounds. But I think for all of this, then we do really need to think about who are making these things, you know, who are the creators and the co-creators as well, and making sure that it's not just diverse in terms of artists and researchers and patients, but also, you know, where are these people from? Because it's still a very, very undiverse community. And I think we need to create things that are reflective of the diversity of human experience as well.
Yes, it's true. And what about psychology, VR, and immersive technology? Have these tools done something significant for furthering mental health?
I mean, yeah, there's so much work that's currently out there at the moment, um, and yeah, there's plenty of places to be able to research it as well. Like I mentioned, then there's the International VR Healthcare Association. There's loads of research coming out as well. Frontiers, which are a big academic publisher, then they now have Frontiers in virtual reality, so you can see lots of work out there, as well as lots of funding opportunities as well. Last year I worked with an organisation called Nesta, who I think it used to stand for, they're just called Nesta now, but it used to stand for the National Endowment of Science, Technology and the Arts. And as a result of this research, they've been running new funding programs to connect artists that want to create mental health interventions in virtual reality with researchers, and finding new ways to make those collaborations easier, because I think sometimes the problem is that in arts and psychology and all these other different industries, then it's hard to speak the same language, and people have different priorities and needs, and researchers have a billion different projects that they're running and constantly have to bring in new forms of funding. But the way that the academic industry works is very different to being an independent artist who is working paycheck to paycheck and needs a different form of stability. So I think that there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of how we really facilitate those collaborations and make sure that it's like equal and fair, and that everyone benefits from it, because that's probably good stuff.
Yes. Can trying to understand chronic pain through virtual reality improve the holistic perspective of humans?
I really hope so. I mean, that's definitely what my intention is. I think that being able to just have even some pain relief is incredibly important. But I'm so passionate about this idea of body mapping in VR and just helping people feel understood, because whilst I am really fortunate not to suffer from chronic pain, like I've still, we all live with invisible experiences every day. Like we are all feeling bodies that experience a lot of a really wide range of complex emotions and feelings, and whilst the languages that we speak are beautiful and diverse, sometimes there just aren't words to talk about how we feel, and it is a feeling that is difficult to translate. So if we can use things like the arts to help communicate that, and really make use of this really interesting offer I think that reality has, of taking you out of your body for a moment and creating this very different and new perspective, then I think that can really change how we communicate things. I guess it maybe could be reflected in this idea of like Solomon's paradox, how it's always easier to tell other people what to do with their problems than it is to deal with your own. Then I think that's what I'm really trying to achieve with Hatsumi. It's like you're creating that feeling of what it's like living with your body, and you're kind of making it something else. So you are confronted with this kind of blank mass that represents you, and you go, well, what is that like for me? And there's something about putting it out there and making it something else, and realizing and looking at it from a more objective standpoint potentially. And being able to cultivate this new form of awareness through that I think hopefully is an opportunity to then go, all right, well, how do we do something about this?
Okay, yes. Sarah, what do you think we need in immersive technology, and why it is so important at this moment, especially for chronic disease and invisible diseases like depression and anxiety?
I think that lockdown has really highlighted the need for doing things differently, but also using technology to reach people that are isolated, that are at home. Difficult before this, let alone now. So whilst I think it's important to acknowledge that this technology is still incredibly inaccessible, and there's lots of things that we really need to work out in terms of who pays for it and who can afford it right now, because it is very inaccessible in that sense, but also increasing accessibility for people that are neurodiverse, that have different physical needs as well. But yeah, I think it has a real role in reaching people remotely. And I think the arts as well have been such a powerful kind of tool that's really gotten us through COVID as well. And just it's been so amazing to see all the bonkers projects that people have been doing, and
Yes.
all these really fascinating things that have been doing, the way like that people have been creating. And that's another thing that really makes me happy, is making stuff. I'm a terrible artist. I think that's why I kind of got interested in body mapping. So I was like, it doesn't matter if this looks terrible, because I'm floating through space and painting with fire. But I think things that can remove that barrier to creativity and just getting people, making stuff and playing and being silly, like that's something that we sometimes forget about as grown-ups, and is a really important part of life.
Yes, I agree. And I think that this pandemic situation is a huge opportunity to growth, and it's the time to so many creativity explode right now. So it's great as well. What else? Well, I have a couple last questions. We are more used to the idea of a birth midwife or doula, but what does it mean to be a death midwife or doula?
So this has been something that I've been in the last few years. So I think that actually one of the big triggers for the episode that initially made me unwell was losing my dad. So he passed away from pancreatic cancer, and like, God, my whole life was just completely turned upside down. And I just remember thinking, like, no one really told me about death. And I think that because of that, I've had a real morbid fascination with death. And so a lot of my research has been around end of life, and just rethinking like what end of life looks like. And so I've been training to be a death doula, which is like a non-medical support to people that are dying and going through the end of life process, as well as their friends and families. Like, it's not like you become unwell and then you pass away, and like someone magically takes your body away and that disappears. Like, there's a huge process about this, and we should all be talking about it and thinking about it now. And I think that through doing that and thinking about the end of life, it also is a real opportunity to think what we do want out of life now as well. And I think that the reason that I took this like terrifying leap into working in the arts in this weird emerging industry was just acknowledging that like I probably could have a quite pleasant, stable job, but like when I'm on my deathbed, am I going to be like, I'm really glad that I had this like nice, stable life, or did something that I was really passionate about? Anyway, I digress. But yeah, so being a doula, then you are helping people thinking about the financial decisions, the legal implications, like what are your choices with you as the person that is passing, and how do you as a friend or family member support people through that? Like, what do you do with the body? Can you keep a body at home after they passed, or do they have to be taken away immediately? What sort of funeral plans do you want? And you can do anything. How would you like to be buried? And what are the things that you would like before that as well? How do you make people comfortable in those last days?
Mm-hmm.
And just thinking really holistically about it. And I think, also just spreading the word that we do need to talk about these things, because it is really traumatic, not only just losing someone, but having to untangle, this huge legal, financial, and deeply emotional like mess that you can be left with. So I do hope that we do increase the conversation about that, because we have to now. Like, the amount of people we've lost in the last few months, like, I'm just speechless and still just don't know how to respond to it. But I really hope that we can start having new conversations about this.
Yes, and last weekend, my husband and I we attend a virtual funeral for one of our friends, and that makes me think and that we don't know. We are in a lot of uncertainty right now in this area, but it's really important this support. Like no matter what, like doesn't matter if it's in person, but we need to feel this support, and it's really important. Mhm.
So sorry you have to go through that. Like that is
Mm.
like the thing we need the most in these times is just other people. So
Mhm.
you can't be so
Was a really beautiful funeral. He was from France, and yeah, like more than 200 people, and the mass was in French and English. Super beautiful message there, and it is special because in this period, in this COVID situation, but definitely I think that we need to get involved in these tools, because the technology is an excellent tool, and it has a potential there and makes a great impact for life. Mhm. Okay, Sarah, to end, is there a final comment that you want to add? Some apps, resources about virtual reality, something that you want to add?
Oh god, I feel quite overwhelmed and emotional. I'm trying to even think of it. I think the resounding thing I'm really feeling at the moment is just how important connection is, and
Yes.
like Zoom calls are never quite enough. But I think being aware of how you're feeling and how you're dealing with things at the moment, and supporting other people is just like the most important thing that we can really do. And so technology is a great connector, but I mean, I actually am not particularly interested in the technology itself. I think it's the things that we can do, and that is around, like, creating a sense of awe or connection or expression. And there are so many ways that we can do that aren't just through phones and computers and fancy VR headsets. Like, if there's someone you love that's having a hard time, or even not, just like write them a letter, or just give them a call out of the blue, or I think those moments are like the most precious things to me at the moment. So always happy to offer support, and if anyone has any questions, then feel free to reach out. My email is Sarah with an H at hatsumivr.com. I'm on Twitter just at Sarah Ticho, Sarah with an H and then Ticho.
All right. Thank you so much, Sarah. For sure, I'm going to share also the links that you can easily go with Sarah just mentioned before. And Sarah, you have been very, very generous in sharing all this knowledge and experience that I'm sure many of the fiber women will appreciate. I feel very honored to meet you. Thank you very much, Sarah, for your time, your words, and for this moment that you have shared so special. And a big hug for you.
Oh, and you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Bye-bye.